The Sweet 16 is here, and the first game of the Sweet 16, um, pretty entertaining game. Alabama BYU. If you like offense, this is probably a game you're going to want to tune into. Should be a pretty fast paced, fun environment game. BYU, of course, one of the hottest teams in the country right now. They've just been playing ridiculous offensive basketball over the last 2 months now, probably. It feels like it's been about that long now. And Saturday was no different. I mean, that game against, was that Sunday? I forget. Days are running together. I think it was Saturday. Saturday against Wisconsin. That game was very exciting. A lot of offense. BYU just got stuff with ease. As for Alabama, they just kind of, I guess, were just a better team than St. Mary's. They kind of coasted their way. Early, it was kind of back and forth. Then Alabama ultimately pulled away, ended up winning by 14. But, this game really should be very entertaining from a fan perspective.
Right, for sure. I mean, I kind of think both offenses set up fairly well, so I think it's going to be even more exciting than what it looks like on the surface. You can start with Bama's offense. They live off, driving and kicking and generating catch and shoot threes, and BYU will kind of allow that at a pretty high rate. I think their defense like 85th percentile in spot up opportunities allowed, and that's really all Bama's really ever looking for. And it's not like BYU is going to turn over Alabama at a super high rate. I know that compact defense of BYU can just kind of generate some turnovers just because it kind of mucks up the lane, but they don't really do a great job just because there's not like a ton of athletes on the perimeter. And I will give BYU's defense some credit. Like, it's made improvements, and I kind of was slow to catch up to the improvements that they made. Like, since they put Moat Mag in the lineup for like more extended minutes, it's been a much better defense. And I don't think I gave Keba Keita like enough credit for his rim protection skills, because like he's been pretty good. But for the rest of the defense, they're going to have a tough time slowing down Mark Sears, LeBaron Philon, Holloway, Chris Youngblood. I think especially Youngblood and Holloway are pretty important in this game. When they get their open looks, they're going to have to knock them down, because BYU's offense is really hard to stop. And Alabama can cut off their catch and shoot game at least, but BYU is so good in so many different spots. Like, for starters, they're going to be able to get all over the offensive glass here. Bama's 154th nationally in defensive rebound rate. BYU 64th on the offensive glass. And like, another really good trait of Keba Keita is his offensive rebounding ability, and he's going to be the biggest player on the floor. He's going to make Amori look pretty narrow and pretty small. Honestly, the guy's chiseled, so he's probably going to get to the spots that he wants to put himself in good spots to rebound. And they're also going to feel really comfortable in this game. We've talked about it enough times here that BYU's offense can get slowed down when it's uncomfortable, when it's being pressured. We thought VCU would give them a little bit of a harder time, but I think the altitude advantage that BYU had like really slowed down that VCU defense, especially in the second half. But in this game, they're not going to have that advantage. But Alabama, 351st in turnover rate defensively. They play that deep drop coverage scheme that, it's trying to force you into the mid-range. And I mean, BYU's kind of shown that they could carve up these passive and drop coverage style defenses. So I kind of like how both offenses set up. But I think the deciding factor is Bama can at least limit the 3-point volume that BYU is going to get, at least from a catch and shoot perspective. So I'm going to side with Alabama here.
Yeah. I have a really hard time picking against BYU right now with the way they're playing. I kind of expect Alabama to win this game. I think this number is too high, though. It's sitting at 5.5. Torvik projects it a little bit closer to 3, I think.
That's what it opened at, too. It opened 3.5, and it got jumped up. So
I think it's too big of a number. I think like BYU's offense is still going to be able to expose Alabama's defense a little bit. I think there are a couple things with BYU's offense that I think translate really into any matchup. And The first is they move the ball through the midcourt so efficiently with the pass. If you watch them play, they get the defensive rebound and that ball is out into an outlet, sometimes 20, 30 feet up the court. And they don't waste a lot of time dribbling the ball. Like you can tell that's a clear emphasis point for Kevin Young. It's like, we're not going to dribble the ball up the court. We're going to move it and we're going to get these guys having to get back quickly. They had a ton of success in the first two rounds doing that. And then the other thing, the fundamentals of these guards is like they're not the most athletic guys, but they have just outstanding fundamentals in terms of, get it when they get into the lane, they all just seem to have really good footwork, especially like Saunders, Hall, Nell, Baker, all those guys. Like they're all just able to do a lot of the same things, and they all seem to make the right reads a lot of times when it comes to how they come off ball screens. Right, they do a great job of severing angles to cut off defenders, and they've actually taught their bigs like a more of an NBA skill to like seal off the roll defender, and they just snake back underneath that and lay it in. Like their footwork and the way that they've been coached, I think is a massive advantage for them in this game where they may lack some athleticism. I still think Alabama's probably a little bit too much for them, but I wouldn't be shocked if BYU did win this game just because of the way they've been playing. Like I think Kevin Young is continuing to prove that he's an elite coach, and I I will be rooting for BYU in this game. Like I've had kind of a soft spot for them. Just they're fun to watch. Really, I mean, they get good shots seemingly every possession. So I do expect Alabama to win, but I see this game as much closer to like a 3-point spread, like it came out at, and not 5.5. So I'm going to take Bama to win, I guess, narrowly. Although, like I said, I'll be rooting for BYU.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really cool story. And like you said, they're a really hard team to guard in pretty much any scenario. I know Bama's a pretty good transition defense, so maybe they can cut that off to an extent, but BYU is one of the elite half-court offenses in the entire country as well. I mean, they're 92nd percentile in points per possession in the half court. And they don't like love to run necessarily. They will run it and when they're given opportunities, but they're so efficient everywhere, even in the half court. But I think the key to this game is if Keba Keita gets in foul trouble, I really see this defense potentially crumbling just because the backup is, Fus Traore. They'll sprinkle in what's his name? What's the European guy's name again? Boscovich, yeah. He's not really much of a defender. Yeah, he can. He can stretch it. And that's big against a Bama defense that plays that drop coverage. The pick and pop three is open. So if they can force those bigs away from the rim, like driving lanes should be open. But
yeah,
Bama they're getting healthy as well. Like Nelson played a decent amount, looked fine. Darian Reed came back. He only played 5 minutes, but I think he's a really important perimeter defender for this team, and he's probably their best one, like him and Phylon. If you can get him out there for 15 to 20 minutes, throw him on Saunders and have him chase him around, I think Reed's like a very underrated defender that nobody talks about. So I think the fact that they're healthy, their defense is getting a little bit better, although they didn't play a ton of drop against St. Mary's last game, which was the first time I've really ever seen that from Alabama. They were like hard hedging Marshallonis. I think it was more just because Marshallonis was the only real perimeter threat for St. Mary's, so they could kind of take him away, force other guys to make shots. But so I do think they'll play drop and force Demon to make as many shots as he wants in the mid range or just off the dribble threes. And I think they're willing to live with that. Although Demon's been pretty good lately, he's been shooting the ball really well. So I'm still going to lean Bama just because I do think Keita getting in foul trouble seems way more likely than not. And, I think Alabama's defense is a little bit better than people are perceiving it lately just because they're getting healthy again.
Yeah. Just another point about BYU that was pretty cool the other night, actually, when I think they came out of halftime and ran, I think, the same play 3 times in a row. It was like a back cut for Demon, but then like a double stagger on the weak side. And Demon got a layup the first time. The second time they ran it and hit the stagger and got a shot. And then, they were like, we're just going to keep taking what you're going to give us, right? I think that just speaks to coaching and how well, these guys are starting to understand what they're really trying to get. So, I am going to side with Bama. We're going to side with Bama. But I expect this to be a pretty fun and entertaining game. So, don't be surprised by any outcome here, but expect Bama to move on to the Elite Eight.